My name is Eric Sanderson, and I never thought that a friendship that lasted for 3 years would be torn to pieces by a strange man in the second shared house, and let me taste the torment of sustenance in 2 months even though I was the one who bore most of the expenses. The story begins when I moved to this strange city 3 years ago. At that time, I had just quit my job in my hometown, with my only savings and a lonely voice, but on the day I landed, I encountered a rental scam. My luggage was stranded at the station and my cell phone had 3% of electricity left. Unaccompanied, I stood on the street at a loss. It was Liora, an alumnus I only met a few times in college. After seeing my help in the circle of friends, I drove to pick me up and took me back. She rented a small apartment. She gave me a second bedroom, helped me find a new house, checked the terms of the rental contract, and accompanied me to sign the contract for fear that I would be cheated again. Knowing that I had repeatedly hit a brick wall in my job search, she used her contacts to push me in and stayed up late to help me revise my resume and simulate the interview. On weekends, he took me to a friend's party and patiently introduced me to every street and restaurant with high-cost performance, even taught me how to ride the complex bus system. In those days, she was like my own sister, giving me real warmth and support when I was most confused and helpless. Out of gratitude, and because she worked as a part-time florist and her income was unstable, I took the initiative to bear 70% of the rent and all the water and electricity expenses in the first apartment we shared. At that time, we would stay on the sofa late at night to watch old movies, share the joys and sorrows of our work, go to the supermarket to stock up and study new recipes. She always said, "Eric, we are just like family." I thought this friendship across difficulties would be like a long stream of water and accompany each other for a long time. This summer, we decided to change to a larger and more comfortable house and lease it directly from the owner. The contract signed our names. In order for Liora to move in smoothly, I paid the deposit and moving expenses totaling $6,000. I still bear 75% of the daily expenses such as water, electricity, gas, and property management. I didn't think there was anything wrong at that time. After all, the 3-year friendship was there, and it was only natural to help each other. But I never expected that this new home I was looking forward to would be the beginning of my nightmare. Not long after moving into the new home, a sudden tragedy defeated Liora. Her 8-year-old dog, Marshmallow, was hit by an out-of-control car while walking and could not be rescued. The white Bichon was her companion since she graduated from college. She always said, "Marshmallow is my dearest family in my life." She would buy it customized snacks, seasonal clothes, and even give up the opportunity to study in New York in order to accompany it to cure its illness. After losing her dog, Liora changed completely. She locked herself in the room and cried for 3 whole days, and then began to drink too much. Beer cans and red wine bottles were piled up all over the bed and the corner of the living room. She was often so drunk that she was unconscious and vomited all over the floor. Her mood became extremely irritable. A little thing would lead to quarrels and her mouth was full of foul language. Even if I accidentally touched her cup, she would point at my nose and scold, "Did you mean it? Even my last thought will be ruined." The girl who was once gentle and considerate and even felt sorry for stepping on an ant became a strange and mean person. We communicate less and less, and finally almost fell into the Cold War, living under the same roof, but becoming strangers. Just when I thought this Cold War would last for a while, the appearance of a strange man completely broke the already fragile balance. A month ago, Liora met a man named Trevor in a bar. I knew nothing about him. I only left a very bad impression when I met him occasionally. He was tall, about 1.93 meters tall, fat, with stubble all over his face unshaved. He always had a peculiar smell of cheap cigarettes and sweat, and his eyes were turbid. The whole body exudes a kind of unspeakable wrong, which makes me feel hairy all over. 2 weeks later, Liora was arrested for DUI and it was Trevor who bailed her out. Since then, he has appeared in our house openly. At first, he only came to stay for most of the day, occupying the sofa in the living room, putting his feet on the tea table, throwing the remote control all over the floor, and sometimes wandering around with bare arms, completely ignoring my existence. I tried to avoid them, never took the initiative to say a word to him, just want to maintain the surface of calm. The calm did not last long. 6 days ago, he spent the night at our house for the first time, followed by the second and third days. I realized something was wrong, and on the morning of the fourth day, I plucked up the courage to communicate with Liora, telling her that it was inappropriate for Trevor to stay in the house for a long time, and that his presence made me uncomfortable. What chills me is that Liora not only did not apologize at all, but rightfully retorted, "This is my boyfriend, this is also my house, I can do whatever I want, it's not up to you." On the morning of the fifth day, when I saw Trevor's toothbrush, towel, and even a pair of mud-stained sneakers thrown on the sink at random in the bathroom, I was completely flustered. He clearly wanted to stay for a long time. I took the rental contract and clearly stated the above clause: visitors cannot stay for more than 14 nights in 6 months. It was this communication that completely tore Leola's face and put me in more trouble. From that day on, Liora and Trevor intensified. They made a mess of the house. The kitchen sink was full of moldy dishes, the soup spilled on the floor and formed a hard lump, the food scraps in the trash overflowed and attracted flies, the bathroom floor was covered with hair and stains, the shower head was removed and thrown in the corner, the mirror was covered with water mist and fingerprints, the living room carpet was full of snack chips, beer cans, and cigarette butts. They even piled unwashed clothes on the sofa, emitting a bad smell. Every day when I come home from work, it takes me more than an hour to clean up to live a normal life, but they not only have no guilt, but also tell me what to do. Trevor will ask me to pass him drinks, and Liora will complain that I moved her things when I packed them. What's more, Trevor often calls loudly in the living room, saying dirty words that can't be heard. Sometimes he brings friends to his house for parties, smoking, drinking, and talking loudly until the early morning, completely ignoring that I have to go to work the next day. The only head-on confrontation between us was when I came home one night and saw them smoking marijuana on the porch, Trevor wearing only loose underwear and leaning almost half-naked against the railing. I couldn't stand it. I said, "Please put on your clothes in public areas." Trevor immediately stared at me and scolded me. "What are you? Does this house have a say for you?" Liora followed suit, "Eric, don't be too melodramatic. Trevor can wear whatever he wants." Liora also began to spread lies everywhere, telling mutual friends, "Eric has been in a very unstable mood recently. He always loses his temper with me. I feel threatened and insecure. I need Trevor to protect me here." This is nonsense. In order to avoid conflicts, I go out immediately after work every day, either go to the library or go to the gym to exercise, and don't go home until 11 or 12 in the morning, avoiding meeting them all the way. I'm well aware that Liora's rhetoric is her self-preservation strategy. Knowing that the contract did not allow Trevor to stay long, she tried to rationalize Trevor's status as a protector by falsely claiming that I was a threat to her, as a way to counter his request to move. I am not worried that the landlord will really believe her lies. After all, I have always been a good tenant who pays the rent on time and takes good care of the house, but I am afraid that they will find this matter too troublesome and simply terminate the lease contract. I like this house too much. I have just lived in this house for 2 months and really don't want to move because of this. Forced into desperation, I took some self-protection measures. I changed my Wi-Fi password. After all, I paid all the water, electricity, and gas charges, and locked all my personal belongings, including plates, kitchen utensils, tableware, laundry detergent, softener, etc., into my bedroom. I don't want them to use my things for free, let alone have any unnecessary involvement with them. But even so, Trevor still appeared at home on time every day, and Liora did not mean to let him move away. I was helpless as never before. I posted on the internet for help and soon received many suggestions from netizens. Some people asked me to ask for a split rent. After all, now I am subsidizing the housing of 2 people. Some people suggested that I let Liora move out and even threatened to call the police. Others advised me to break my contract and find a new place to live. Others reminded me that Florida's tenant regulations have clear restrictions on resident visitors and asked me to contact the landlord as soon as possible. I have considered most of the suggestions of netizens. Regarding the split of rent, I have already sent an email to Liora, and also attached all the water and electricity bills, calculated the amount she should bear, and asked her to settle on the first of each month, but she made it clear that she would not pay, but I kept all the records. If there is no way, I can only sue her through the small claims court. I have told Liora countless times about letting her move, but she firmly refused on the grounds that her name was on the contract. Unless the landlord forced her to evict her, I could only choose to break the contract, but the loss of breaking the contract was so great that I couldn't afford another $6,000 to move again, let alone from such a good one. The house moved into a dilapidated apartment. As for contacting the landlord, I have already communicated with her. The landlord lives next door and knows something about Trevor's long-term stay and mess up the house. She told me before that the 6 months and 14 nights rule in the contract is to prevent this from happening. The days passed in this torment, and the relationship between Liora and me completely broke down, and the atmosphere in the family was extremely depressed. I gradually found that Trevor's SUV was full of clothes, shoes, clothes hangers, and some daily necessities. There was also a folding mattress in the back seat of the car. Obviously, he had no other place to live. He was homeless. Through the relationship of Liora, he stayed in our house. And Liora, ever since I met Trevor, has become more and more selfish, mean, and rude, not the girl I knew at first. The two of them, like high school students, fell into the pathological dependence of we against the world. Liora lost her driver's license because of drunk driving, spent all her free time with Trevor every day, and left her former best friend out of the sky. The landlord repeatedly reminded Liora that the contract prohibited visitors from staying for more than 14 nights, but Liora always disagreed and insisted that she needed Trevor's protection. In desperation, the landlord sent Liora a formal notice that if Trevor stayed for more than 14 nights, we would both be evicted. Liora promised to let him go after 14 days, but on the 15th day, Trevor showed up at the door on time. I couldn't help it any longer. I had a heated argument with Liora. In order to protect myself, I turned on my cell phone and recorded the whole time. I asked her why she broke her promise and why she broke our agreement and friendship, but Liora in turn called me stingy and calculating. During the argument, Trevor suddenly rushed over, grabbed me by the collar and punched me in the left face. The sharp pain came instantly. I felt blood oozing from the corners of my mouth and my cell phone fell to the ground. To tell the truth, I was worried that there was not enough evidence to call the police, but his punch completely justified me. I broke away from him, picked up my phone and immediately dialed 911. The police arrived quickly, retrieved the video in my mobile phone, checked the situation in the house, and asked the landlord and neighbors. Trevor was taken away facing a fine and detention for wounding with intent. Liora was crying and making noise, trying to defend Trevor, saying that I started provocation first, but after watching the video and the evidence at the scene, the police did not believe her at all. I went to the hospital for an examination and was diagnosed as a slight concussion and facial soft tissue contusion. The doctor gave me a diagnosis certificate and medicine. After the conflict, Trevor was detained for 10 days. After coming out, he didn't dare come near our house again, but Liora still didn't wake up. She cried to people everywhere, saying that I ruined her life, and tried to contact the landlord, hoping that the landlord would only expel me, but the landlord had already seen her true face and stood firmly on my side. The landlord again issued an eviction notice to Liora, requiring her to move out within 10 days or go through legal proceedings. The end for Liora and Trevor was tragic. Trevor can't find a stable job because of his criminal record of intentional injury, and his previous record of drunk driving and theft, so he can only make ends meet by doing odd jobs. Liora had long-term alcoholism, chaotic work and rest, physical problems, severe gastritis and depression, and because she had no stable income, she could not pay the rent, so she had to move to a dilapidated basement. It was later heard that Trevor had to flee the city and leave Liora alone because he owed a loan shark. Losing her home, her love, and all her friends, and living on the government's dole, Liora would occasionally be seen on the streets, haggard and empty-eyed, with no more of the glory of her days. And I, after Liora moved away, finally found a peaceful life again. Because the landlord trusted me, he agreed to let me renew the lease alone. I redecorated the house, replaced it with new furniture and curtains, and took care of the space that had been ruined in a way that was warm and comfortable. I changed to a more satisfactory job, my salary increased a lot, and I met new friends. I would go hiking, camping and watching football games with them on weekends. My face injury also slowly recovered, but the corners of the mouth left a shallow scar. Every time I touch it, I will think of this experience, remind myself to learn to protect themselves, but also to be cautious of friendship. Now, it has been a year since the rent-sharing robbery. I have taken root in this city, bought a car of my own, and am still planning to save money to buy a house. I still believe that friendship is precious, but I also understand that not all friendships are worth cherishing and not all people are worth paying. In matters involving interests and principles, the necessary boundaries and rules are indispensable. Some relationships, once coerced by desire and selfishness, never return to the original appearance. This experience has taught me 3 profound lessons. First, we must have a good relationship with the landlord. When we encounter problems, the landlord's understanding and support are very important. Second, no matter how good the relationship with friends is, we must sign a separate rent-sharing agreement before sharing the lease to clarify the rights and obligations of both parties and avoid unnecessary disputes in the future. Third, when we encounter unfair and injury, cannot blindly tolerate, to learn to use legal weapons to protect themselves. Now, every day when I come home from work, I will make a cup of tea, sit on the balcony and look at the scenery, enjoying my own peace and happiness. Those dark days have passed, and there is still a long way to go. I will take this lesson and growth, and continue to walk bravely to meet a better life. All friends can only live on the government's relief funds, occasionally see her in the streets, haggard, eyes empty, no longer the glory of the year. And I, after Liora moved away, finally found a peaceful life again. Because the landlord trusted me, he agreed to let me renew the lease alone. I redecorated the house, replaced it with new furniture and curtains, and took care of the space that had been ruined in a way that was warm and comfortable. I changed to a more satisfactory job, my salary increased a lot, and I met new friends. I would go hiking, camping and watching football games with them on weekends. My face injury also slowly recovered, but the corners of the mouth left a shallow scar. Every time I touch it, I will think of this experience, remind myself to learn to protect themselves, but also to be cautious of friendship. Now, it has been a year since the rent-sharing robbery. I have taken root in this city, bought a car of my own, and am still planning to save money to buy a house. I still believe that friendship is precious, but I also understand that not all friendships are worth cherishing and not all people are worth paying. In matters involving interests and principles, the necessary boundaries and rules are indispensable. Some relationships, once coerced by desire and selfishness, never return to the original appearance. This experience has taught me 3 profound lessons. First, we must have a good relationship with the landlord. When we encounter problems, the landlord's understanding and support are very important. Second, no matter how good the relationship with friends is, we must sign a separate rent-sharing agreement before sharing the lease to clarify the rights and obligations of both parties and avoid unnecessary disputes in the future. Third, when we encounter unfair and injury, cannot blindly tolerate, to learn to use legal weapons to protect themselves. Now, every day when I come home from work, I will make a cup of tea, sit on the balcony and look at the scenery, enjoying my own peace and happiness. Those dark days have passed, and there is still a long way to go. I will take this lesson and growth, and continue to go on bravely to meet a better life. All friends can only live on the government's relief funds, occasionally see her in the streets, haggard, eyes empty, no longer the glory of the year. And I, after Liora moved away, finally found a peaceful life again. Because the landlord trusted me, he agreed to let me renew the lease alone. I redecorated the house, replaced it with new furniture and curtains, and took care of the space that had been ruined in a way that was warm and comfortable. I changed to a more satisfactory job, my salary increased a lot, and I met new friends. I would go hiking, camping and watching football games with them on weekends. My face injury also slowly recovered, but the corners of the mouth left a shallow scar. Every time I touch it, I will think of this experience, remind myself to learn to protect themselves, but also to be cautious of friendship. Now, it has been a year since the rent-sharing robbery. I have taken root in this city, bought a car of my own, and am still planning to save money to buy a house. I still believe that friendship is precious, but I also understand that not all friendships are worth cherishing and not all people are worth paying. In matters involving interests and principles, the necessary boundaries and rules are indispensable. Some relationships, once coerced by desire and selfishness, never return to the original appearance. This experience has taught me 3 profound lessons. First, we must have a good relationship with the landlord. When we encounter problems, the landlord's understanding and support are very important. Second, no matter how good the relationship with friends is, we must sign a separate rent-sharing agreement before sharing the lease to clarify the rights and obligations of both parties and avoid unnecessary disputes in the future. Third, when we encounter unfair and injury, cannot blindly tolerate, to learn to use legal weapons to protect themselves. Now, every day when I come home from work, I will make a cup of tea, sit on the balcony and look at the scenery, enjoying my own peace and happiness. Those dark days have passed, and there is still a long way to go. I will take this lesson and growth, and continue to go on bravely to meet a better life.